last week of school. That is crazy, crazy stuff. Next week is really the last week of 7th grade. June 5th will be the last day of instruction in class. After that, it is just inputting grades and making sure everyone has all their work turned in, and maybe we'll do like a fun extra credit assignment or like a class party. But basically, today is the second to last week, and really this week is kind of the last big part of geology that we're going to be looking at. Next week we're going to majorly look at like catastrophic events like earthquakes and tsunamis and like hurricanes, tornadoes, that type of stuff. This week we are going deep into the rock cycle, and then you guys are going to do a little bit of review of the last like 3 or 4 major topics that we've talked about. And on Friday we will have a 20-point quiz. So this week's assignment, the first part is what we're going to be doing today, which is going to have to do with these fun things. And then afterwards, it's like the study guide that I posted for the chemistry unit. So you have some videos that you watch based on certain concepts. You answer certain questions about it. And then our Zooms this week will go over a little bit of the rock cycle for half of it, and then the other half we will play some sort of review game. And on Friday you will have your 20-point quiz. Yay. If you didn't get any of that, don't worry. It's all going to be on the week at a glance, so don't panic. I'll probably go over it again at some point in this video because I just like to repeat myself, you know? Okay, let's do a recap. Now, I was going to wear my recap hat, but it took me a really long time to get my hair like this. Not that it even looks good right now, so I don't want it to be ruined. Hello, Jody!
Hi, what are you doing?
What a gal. What a gal. So we're going to review without the recap. So, we talked about 3 different plate boundaries last week, and we talked about continental drift and all of that type of stuff. So let's review the 3 plate boundaries. We have transform boundaries, which are conservative, meaning that they don't destroy or create new crust. They basically slide next to each other. At this boundary, the only thing that occurs is earthquakes. The next boundary was divergent, where the plates move apart from one another. When the plates move apart, the mantle rises up and the magma hardens. That's where we get the mid-ocean ridge formation. We have a lot of volcanic activity happening there, and we also have the formation of new igneous rock. At divergent plate boundaries, earthquakes also occur. The next boundary is convergent. Jody, you want to come in and tell them all about convergent plate boundaries? Come on! Convergent plate boundaries. Jody, come on! Frank, you want to come tell us about convergent plate boundaries, where the 2 plates collide, right? Come on! Collide.
And when those 2 plates collide, normally that's where you form mountain ranges. Even volcanoes in that area too, because there are hot spots that come up through that. But the collisions form some of the biggest mountain ranges in the world.
But that's only for continental crust. If we have continental oceanic, then we form trenches because we have a subduction zone. And this is where one plate will go under the other into the mantle and melt. So, the creation of landforms indicates what type of plate boundary is occurring in that specific area. So, the Himalayan mountains are a great example of a convergent plate boundary occurring and forming a mountain range. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is a great example of 2 plates moving apart and forming an underwater ridge. And where we live is a great example of a transform boundary where there's no landforms, but there is a lot of earthquakes. Okay, so landforms and earthquake patterns and volcanic patterns are a huge indication of a certain plate boundary occurring. Now, scientists studied these landforms to better understand how these continents that we live on have formed and been placed in the way that they are today. because we know that the continents looked a lot different back in the day. We had our supercontinent Pangaea that broke apart, and through studying of fossils, we have the studying of rock patterns, landform patterns, earthquake activity, and the actual shape of the continents. We can use that evidence to understand continental drift. Now, last week I told you that plate motion was going to play a huge part in the rock cycle. And today we are diving into the rock cycle full force. We're talking about every single rock, how every single rock is formed, and how every single rock can be transformed into a different rock. And we're going to be using Starburst. Can you tell that I like to compare rocks to candy? Oh well. So what I've done first is I've taken a Starburst, all 4 different colors, and I've cut them up into little tiny pieces. This is our sediment. Now remember, this Starburst can be any type of rock. It can be igneous, metamorphic, or sedimentary. Any rock can be weathered and eroded in order to form sediment, as long as it is exposed to Earth's environment. So we know that metamorphic rocks and igneous rocks can be formed underneath Earth's surface. So how do they come up? I talked about it a couple weeks ago. It's called uplifting. When weathering and erosion occurs on Earth's surface, rocks that are below the surface basically get risen up. They get uplifted from below Earth's surface, and then they are exposed to Earth's environment. So this Starburst can be anything, any type of rock, but it is weathered and eroded and formed into our sediment.
So, just like the Jolly Rancher activity, notice that all the sediments, they are different colors, they are different shapes, and they are different sizes. So, every color represents sediment from a different rock. Again, it can be igneous, metamorphic, or sedimentary. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take some sediment from each color. Pink's my favorite, so we're going to use the most of that one. And we're going to start squishing them together. Just like the Jolly Rancher activity, this is representing compaction. So all of a sudden we had our separate pieces of sediment that are now together. Now we know compaction isn't the only thing that happens to sediment. Cementation can also happen. So compaction and cementation are how sedimentary rocks are formed. So since we don't have any rainwater or groundwater that has the particles to break down our starburst sediment, I'm just going to use the heat of my hand. And I'm just going to kind of warm it up and press it together. Not a lot, because compaction doesn't, or cementation doesn't have a lot of heat and pressure. But you can see that now the colors are kind of blended in together. So this is our sedimentary rock, formed from different sediment, compacted and cemented together to form this rock. Remember, this happens over millions and millions of years. Now, let's pretend that this sedimentary rock is at the bottom of the ocean, and it is on an oceanic plate, which is being subducted under a continental plate. So this sedimentary rock, all of a sudden, is being pushed down into the mantle, and as it's being pushed, an intense amount of heat and pressure is being applied to this rock. So what I'm going to do now is really warm up the starburst rock in my hand. This is representing the heat and the pressure, because I'm also pressing down. Okay. We know metamorphic rocks have to come from a mother rock. So depending on which type of rock is being exposed to this immense amount of heat and pressure will determine what type of metamorphic rock is actually being formed. Okay, so it's being heated up, and now I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to do that again. One more time. And what I'm going to do now, oops, I'm going to put it into my bag. Now I'm going to put something heavy on it to represent more pressure, because clearly my arms are weak, I guess. So I'm going to use this protein powder, and I'm going to put it on top of my rock, and I'm going to press it down. Go down this way. Here is our metamorphic rock. You can see that all those sediments have kind of been melted and pushed together to form almost like a tie-dye look on the Starburst. And this is what's happening when a sedimentary rock, or igneous rock, it can be igneous as well, is put with a lot of heat and pressure. Now, the metamorphic rock can go into two separate lanes. The rock cycle, like I've said, you can basically turn any rock into another rock depending on which path or which process occurs. So this can be uplifted and put onto Earth's surface, weathered and eroded, and turned back into a sedimentary rock. Or it can be melted into magma, which then can turn into an igneous rock. So I'm going to show you the melting. So I'm going to put our metamorphic rock in the microwave. Rock has been melted into magma. You can see all of those air bubbles. Okay, now this magma is either going to be shot out of a volcano and then cooled to form igneous rock, or it could also be cooled below Earth's surface and then have to be uplifted. So we're going to wait for this to cool, and then we'll form it into a different rock. So as it's cooling, we can see that if weathering and erosion occurred, I mean, it's not fully cooled yet, but you know, we can break it up into sediment once again. So this would be an example of igneous rock being weathered and eroded in order to form sediment once again. And that is just one part or one cycle of the rock cycle. Like I said, rocks can be exposed to a lot of different processes, which can cause them to turn into different types of rock.
So, for example, if I had an igneous rock that got subducted into the center of Earth, not the center of Earth, into the mantle, say it was on top of an oceanic plate, got subducted, and an igneous rock can turn into a metamorphic rock. And then that metamorphic rock can be uplifted and weathered and eroded and form into a sedimentary rock. So you see, it doesn't have to go in just a circle. It can kind of go all which ways and still form different types of rock. So that's kind of what makes it a cycle. It's never ending, and there's a whole bunch of different pathways that these rocks can go on. Their like lifespan could be a whole bunch of different ways. Basically, whichever path this rock takes, whichever process it is exposed to, determines its life. Now, this brings me into one of your extra credit opportunities. I actually have two for you this week, so you have a chance to get 4 extra credit points this week. So the first one is I want you guys to be a little creative, and I want you to show me that you understand the rock cycle, and you can do this in one of 2 ways. Okay, you can do like a draw my life, if you have ever seen those things on like YouTube or anything like that, where you basically start with one type of rock, and I would like if you gave it a certain character name. I did an example here where we are talking about Iggy, the igneous rock, and you draw the lifespan of your rock, showing how it goes to each part of the cycle. So for mine, Iggy went through weathering and erosion into sediment, where she was compacted and cemented into sedimentary rock. Then a lot of heat and pressure occurred to form a metamorphic rock, and then it was melted to form magma, which spurted out of the volcano, which then cooled, and she was formed back into an igneous rock. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm the best artiste, because clearly I'm not. So if you don't really want to draw the lifespan of a rock, you can write a short story. So using character names and descriptions, you can write me like a paragraph short story of, your rock and how it goes through the rock cycle. So you can do one of two things, just one. You don't have to do both to get both points of extra credit. Just do one and send it to me, either a picture like this or a little short story telling me how your rock got to where it is today. So what you're going to do is you're going to go below. You can see that I found a picture on the internet that shows the rock cycle in like a drawing formation. I think that's super helpful to look at and to get a visual of how these rocks can turn into other rocks and all that stuff. And then you're going to answer the questions. Basically, they're very simple, and that is something that is important that I want you guys to know. Since we don't have a ton of time with geology, these questions and the questions on your quiz are going to be very basic. They're going to cover the basic information. I'm not going to ask you a ton of detail. Something that is important, though, is understanding how these rocks are formed and the processes. So you should be using terms like melting, cooling, compaction and cementation, heat and pressure, weathering and erosion. Those are the terms that you should be using in order to describe how your rocks are formed. So that is the rock cycle in a nutshell, or should I say like in a starburst shell. I hope that kind of gave you an idea of what the rocks experience and look like, and obviously I can't show you how rocks are actually turned, so I used a model with Starburst, and I hope you liked it. I hope it helped. Answer the questions below, start working on your extra credit assignment. The extra credit assignment will help you study, so I'm really encouraging you guys to do it because it will help you understand how these rocks are formed and how they transform into one another, so do it. Okay. I forgot to mention your other opportunity for extra credit. So, one, you can do the rock cycle short story or the rock cycle draw my life. The second opportunity for extra credit is I love to read. I unfortunately haven't been able to read as much as I would have liked in this quarantine period because I've kind of just like lost some inspiration for new books. So I want to hear from you. I am assuming a lot of you are having to do reading for your English class. So I want you to send me a picture of either what you're currently reading or your favorite book of all time. Do one of those two things, you get 2 points. Do both things, and you get 4 points. Whee! Continental drift. Continental drift. Bye!